Well, hello everybody. This is Miss Uli from the Punxsutawney Library. I'm glad you're back to see our newest video. Today we have a friend here with us. This is Nikki.
Hello.
And Nikki will do some Halloween makeup and show you step by step how you can do certain things. And we're going to do a zombie face, but it can be adapted. So you will learn more about this as we go. So, here we are, ready?
Well, the thing we're going to cover is skin tears. You can use this anytime you need to make a cut or a gash or like rotten skin. We're going to do two different techniques. The first one is going to be for the cut. And what you're going to do, I'm using liquid latex today. If you have a latex allergy, you can use plain white Elmer's glue because it works pretty much the same way, but it won't irritate your skin. I just have a plain piece of tissue and I'm going to tear it into the size that I want, maybe. And you want to start with this before you do any other makeup because if you put makeup down, the latex won't stick. I think I'm going to go on the forehead and just do a small cut. And then we're going to do a different technique down here on the cheek. So you want to paint a thin layer of latex where you want your cut to be. You want to make it a little bigger than how big you want the cut to be. And then once you have that down, we're going to lay down a single layer of tissue on top of it. And the latex will grab the tissue, hopefully, and hold it. Okay. And then once that's down, we're going to paint another very thin layer of latex, pressing it down. Wait for that to dry a second. And then we're going to take another piece of tissue. You're going to want to do 2 or 3 layers depending on how deep you want your gash to look. And like Miss Uli said, we're doing a zombie face today, but you can use this to make any kind of bloody wound you could possibly dream of. Throat slashes, you know, anything like that. And you can use it anywhere on the body, not just the face. Get these harder. Okay. Now I'm going to do one more layer of latex. Paint those edges down. You want your baby hair. Liquid latex you can buy all over the place now. Any Halloween makeup store, I think even Walmart carries it now. It's not too expensive, so that's nice. Okay. We're going to fade those edges just a little bit, and then we're going to let it dry. So I'll move on to the other thing I want to do, which is just kind of we're going to make an area down here that's just going to look like rotting, dead skin. Which is a little bit easier because we don't have to worry about the tissue. We just have to lay down a few layers. I should have brought my big fan. A few layers of latex that we can tear little tiny holes in and look like the flesh is coming away a little bit.
Now, if you want to do rotting skin, can you do that with the glue as well, or do you have to have latex?
I've never actually tried it with the glue that way. You could try it. I probably would work the same way. You want to make sure your layers are pretty well dry in between. And up here where the tissue grabbed onto the latex, it might crinkle a little bit. That's perfectly fine because it's just going to look like the skin's damaged, which if you've got a big gaping wound, there's no reason it wouldn't be damaged. Okay, we'll do that. Just like that. And we'll let that dry. So we should be done with our latex for now. Now we want to create a wound, right? So we want to take our tweezers or little pieces of scissors and make a hole, and try not to pinch the skin or cut yourself underneath. I can't get it. There we go. Okay. Once you have your hole, then you can just cut across to make a wound. And I want to separate that so that we have our skin flaps on either side of the wound. And once you have your hole with your tweezers, or I use my eyelash scissors, you can just kind of use your fingernails so that you don't run the risk of cutting yourself underneath there. And we are going to, now that we have this done, then we're going to start painting the face. Now I've got Miss Uli's regular foundation color, and I'm adding just a little bit of yellow from my paint palette here to kind of give it a sallow, sickly kind of color. Okay. Then I'm going to use my regular beauty sponge. Any sponge you have, a brush will be just fine. I'm just going to cover basically the whole face in this base shade. I'm going to really get in there in all your crevices, by your nose, by your eyes, and make sure we lay down a good solid base. You can even use your hands if you don't have tools like this. You can buy regular beauty sponges in any beauty department, Walmart, Rite Aid, on the cheap. The little, just kind of foam sponges. Now you definitely want to get good coverage up and around and on the latex piece that we laid down, so it blends in with the regular skin. And remember, when you're laying down a base, get up into the hairline and blend it so we don't look like we're wearing a mask. And you blend down to the ear and down past the neckline. Once again, so we don't look like we're wearing a mask. Okay, we have our base down. So now I'm gonna do the eye area. And that is where we will do our bruising technique. So you can use this for any reason your costume might possibly have bruising. Black eyes, if you're playing a boxer, you want a big black eye. Everything I'm using as far as the paint palettes are from Wet n Wild. They make these neat little 6-pan cream palettes for Halloween. They're like $5, and they're way better quality than you get in like a Halloween makeup kit. You can use those obviously, but this stuff tends to have a little more lasting power, a little more pigmentation. So they tend to look a little nicer and stay a little better. Come on, you close your eyes. Now, we're going to start with the black in the middle on the lid. And with these kind of cream paint, it is a nice technique to just go in with your fingers because they tend to lay down a lot nicer. We're gonna take a brush and go here and and this doesn't have to be super neat or orderly looking because we're just gonna smudge the heck out of it, pat and blend. So it doesn't have to be very pristine looking. Then we're gonna take a dark purple, and this counts for any bruise you want to make on your entire body. If you want a big black and blue mark on your arm for whatever reason, the same color scheme, same technique basically. If you think about how a bruise forms on your body, generally the deepest in the middle where the damage was the worst, and then reds and greens and yellows come in as it starts to heal from the outside. So we're gonna just go with this deep purple bruisey color and pat and blend it out this way. And we are totally ignoring Miss Uli's eyebrows because zombies don't get their eyebrows done.
There you go.
But if you were maybe not doing this big of an eye, if you just had a smaller eye, you could take a brush that looks like this, just kind of a pencil brush, and kind of do this motion, flick like that, and make big bushy brows.
So now we ignored one side and the
Okay. We're gonna take a little bit of green in here, right in this area. We get some healing going on. Zombies wouldn't necessarily heal, but for the sake of the video, we'll say. And a yellow. So you can see how the colors blend. And the goal with this is kind of, you don't want to have any hard lines. You want everything to be very blended, very feathered out. Put a little more black in there. If you ever overdo it somewhere, you can take your sponge or whatever you had your base color on and just kind of soften it. There we go. And for Uli's sake, we'll do the other eyebrow. Okay. Fantastic. Now, contour, which is something you can use for absolutely any look. If you're doing a beauty look, you're not going to want to use these shades, but you can definitely use the same kind of idea. Any kind of skull look, you'll kind of have these same principles at play. I'm going to use a nice deep gray shade for our contour shade on Miss Uli, because we want really deep shadows. And the point of contour is creating depth and making shadows. So anywhere that you would naturally have a shadow fall on your face, you can find Miss Uli's cheekbone here. We're gonna go with this, and bring it down. We're gonna make our line and then we'll blend. So that, you're gonna want to turn your face so she can see this side, because the contour looks a lot, you can see it better because of this latex over here. So if you see on this side, I just made a line down and then kind of blended it out to soften it up a little bit, and it creates that shadow to give her a more hollow cheek. Because anywhere you put a darker shade is gonna bring that spot in, make it deeper, and anywhere you put a really light, like a highlight shade, is going to bring it out. So we'll contour the nose now. Zombies don't necessarily need contoured noses, but for the sake of the technique, we'll contour the nose. And you can make your nose any shape you want, just with using contour shades. So what we're going to do is, like Miss Uli has a cute little ridge in her nose right here. If you wanted to eliminate that, you could bring the contour in closer together to eliminate that. We're gonna accentuate it, and we're gonna make the contour come in here and out around it, and then down the nose. But if you wanted to eliminate that ridge, you wouldn't contour the whole nose, just bring the edges of that in slightly. So it would make it seem less obvious, but we're gonna just make it pop. So I'm creating new shadows on Miss Uli's nose, basically. I'm just gonna soften them slightly. Here I'm just blending the line outwards a little bit, making it not such a hard line, because like I said before, you don't really want a lot of hard lines. You want them to be soft. I'm going to add a little bit more gray up here, because the latex really grabbed it. So we want to make sure it balances. And we're going to give her a little bit of a shadow on the forehead. Anywhere the hairline kind of dips back. Create a more gaunt, scully looking silhouette. Okay, now one more thing I want to do with the contour is bring your chin, make your chin a little more defined. So what we're going to do is bring the contour down the jawline to create that jawline. And I'm going to bring it up slightly to give you a little bit more of a chin, just so we can show off what we can do with shadows. Now we have our chin. Okay, now we're gonna finish the skin tears. Not because now we have to be dry. We have to be dry by now. Be kind of careful. You just want to get under that latex. You don't want to get under the skin.
Once the light starts coming.
There we go. Okay, we're going to make a nice big hole here. Oh, yes, beautiful. It's coming nicely now. Does that hurt? Is it rolling on your skin? And all these little edges, if you were doing something nice and pretty, you could take them off, but we're gonna leave them. Because we're not doing pretty, we're doing spooky. Stuff back together.
There we go.
Beautiful. I'm gonna do one more down here, and then that should do it. And once I get these holes torn, then comes the really, really, really fun part. Beautiful. Okay. So we'll start with our gash up top here. Inside the wound, we want to create depth again. So we're going to start with a black inside. I'm going to get underneath the edges. I might need a smaller brush. Of our gash that we created, and lay down a base of dark black. Especially around the edges, inside the edges of the gash. We're going to do something else with the outside edges. After that, then we're going to take our deep red shade and go over that in the middle. Okay. Oh, I want that. Just going to take a little bit of a fleshy colored tone and get our edges of our wound, the skin edges, slightly. And then we can take a little bit of a, let me see which red will be better. This red. A little bit of a red shade. And kind of irritate the skin, or not literally, create what looks like irritation around the wound. So just tap very gently and kind of blend it out a little bit. You don't want it to go crazy, but you do want a little bit. So look like that skin is just tender. Now's the really fun part. My favorite kind of blood to work with is called bloody scab. It's very thick. As you can see, it's not a liquid blood. It's more like jelly. And this is really nice for taking inside stuff like this because you can create texture and make it look really. So what I'm going to do is just get a nice big gob of this on my brush and just kind of pat it in there. To make that wound on the forehead look gnarly. If you pat this stuff, it should peak for you a little bit and create a really nice, I don't know about nice, but an interesting texture. And then we can take our more liquid blood and a little bit of a bigger brush like this, a paintbrush will work just fine. Miss Uli's gonna want to close her eyes. You can take your finger and just kind of flick. And I don't know if how well you can see it. This stuff's a little bit thicker maybe than would be useful to us for this, but the liquid blood that you can buy at Walmart or any store will flick very nicely. This one just doesn't want to do it for me really, but it's doing it a little bit. Now we're gonna move on to our skin tears down here. So for inside these, I actually want to blend this a little bit better before we get moving on the tears. So we don't have that hard line of the latex on the chin there. Or the jawline rather. Okay. We want our, I'm gonna take just the yellow shade that I used to kind of sallow the base shade, and I'm gonna lay down a base on the latex where I made the skin tears. So that skin looks a little more sickly than the rest of you already does. And I want these to be a little brighter because I'm not going to put quite as much blood, I don't think, we'll see, in them as I did this one. So I'm going to take this deep purpley red and paint inside these stairs. And this be useful for, like I said, we're doing a zombie. Zombies often have gross things happening on their skin. Or if you did like a, I don't know if this would be very good for this year, but like a plague, you know, contagion type of situation. You could do this for that. You could do your whole face if you're really patient. Just a little bit, because the point of this, instead of just painting, you know, painting red circles on your face and saying they're wounds, the point of this is to have that gnarly texture. So you want to make sure the edges are kind of lifted up a little bit. You can even put a little bit of that same red on the edges. It's the same shade we used up here for our irritation around the wound. Use that, and then I'm going to take, I think, a little bit of this purpley, true purple, and kind of just tap ever so slightly around each one. Something is happening to this skin over here. We're not sure what it is, but it's definitely not good. I actually do want to take my liner brush, real thin brush. You can buy these just in paint brushes too. And kind of go inside the edges to add depth once again. So you can see that kind of creates a shadow under there. Makes it look a little bit more like the skin is coming up in that area. I am going to put a little bit, once I find my brush, of our bloody scab, chunky blood, just slightly, to make them a little juicier. We also want to take the edge that you've lifted and get some blood on the underside of that. Because remember, this is skin that has come away from the face. So it's definitely not going to be clean. And if you don't want to buy blood and you have corn syrup at your house, corn syrup and red food dye has been the poor man's stage blood for as long as anyone can remember. So it works very nicely. Was that me?
No.
Oh, thank God.
I wore an old shirt on purpose, just in case.
Good idea. That's another thing. Try to do your makeup before you get your costume on if you can help it. If you can't, try to wear something over your costume, like an old flannel you can button up and take off without taking it over your head, so you don't ruin all of your hard work and get it all over your clothes. Yeah, the blood lands where it lands, right?
Right.
Ever so slightly around this. Give it a little more sheen. Blood is wet. And one last thing I want to do, I want to do the lip too. But one last thing I do before I do that is take my pencil brush and this purple. I actually had this thought yesterday when I was thinking about your face. I want to take and make some veiny just very gently drawing just some weird little squiggly lines away from our decrepit skin over here, like the infection is spreading. A little more purple. And it doesn't take a lot of talent. You don't have to be like some super fantastic makeup artist, I'm certainly not, to pull off a really, really cool Halloween look. Because you just kind of have to let yourself not be afraid and just go for it, you know? As long as you get the basic idea and people know what you are, I think that's the goal, right?
Right.
So for the lip, once again, we're going to create depth in the middle. I'm going to try not to get it on your teeth. I want to use this. So I think I'm going to go in first with the base shade and cover the lip completely. And then just take some black in the middle. And feather it out ever so slightly. Create a little, what's the word of the day? Depth. Apparently, I keep saying it. Yeah, that'll work. Okay. And if you want your zombie to have recently eaten someone, you can take this in the cup and just smear it wherever you want it. So I think that about covers it. We've covered skin tears. Like I said, you can use those anywhere. You can make gunshot wounds with them. You can make throat slashes with them. You can make just general kind of cuts. The bruising, once again, anywhere. I think if you were doing anything other than a black eye, I would go a little heavier on the reds and yellows as opposed to the purples. But since it's around the eyes, we're gonna go with really nice and dark. Oh, one last thing I wanted to mention. I'm not gonna use that. You see how the lid is creasing here? And that'll happen to anybody because your eyelids are oily compared to the rest of your face. So if Miss Uli's not allergic to talc or anything like that,
Not that I know.
okay. I'm gonna use my good old-fashioned air spun like your grandma probably uses. And we're just gonna set this very gently. I should have done this before I did the blood, but just take a nice big fluffy brush, any kind. I wouldn't necessarily use the puff that comes in a setting powder because they can be a little heavy-handed. Another thing that a setting will do is kind of help any of this bruising makeup that you did, will help it look a little more realistic because it won't be shiny. You want it to be matte, which means it's not shiny. And it will also, setting will help keep it from laying in the creases in your face. Unless you want it to lay in the creases in your face, which is valid for Halloween. So I think that about covers what we wanted to cover today. Contour and bruising and skin tears. And I hope you learned something, and I hope you have a very happy Halloween.
All right. Well, thank you so much for coming in and helping us with this. And now I can't wait to see myself. All right. Let us know if you go ahead and do any of it. As always, send us pictures. We love to see the results of what you have. And don't worry about it. It's Halloween. It doesn't have to look perfect.
Yeah.
See you later.